Okay, 11 a.m., how are we doing? Oh, 11 a.m. is wide and awake. I like it. Hey, you guys are in for a treat this morning. I really, really, really do mean that. 9 a.m. was amazing. Let me catch you up to speed real quick, okay? One, if you're new, my name is Mark, one of the pastors here at The Bridge. As you can tell on the image on the screen behind me, we're in a series called Humans of the Bible, but July has kind of been a very different type of month around here, all in a good way. We started this series probably actually about a month ago, and we only got 2 weeks in, and we looked at the characters of Jonah, and then we looked at the character of Joseph. Then we kind of took this extended halftime break. The 2 Sundays ago, we had Youth Sunday, which was absolutely amazing. We do that every summer, put on by a youth group after summer camp. Then this past Sunday, we had Global Mission Sunday for like the first time ever. That was amazing. By the way, if you want more information on going to Kenya or going to Mexico, there are QR codes and flyers right back at the information center. And in the coming weeks and months, we will be giving more information about that. But please sign up for those if that's somewhat interesting to you. Actually, even if it's not interesting to you, sign up. Here's what I want to do real quick, because this morning is going to be more like the last 2 weeks than a quote-unquote normal Sunday, and you'll see why. But I want to give some context. Contrary maybe to what you think, we don't just pick random series to do for like no reason at all. There's always a purpose. There's a motivation that we want to do in a sermon series. And for this one, I think one of the main goals was this. So often in conversations that I'm in when I'm getting coffee with people, most people really struggle to read the Bible because it seems like the Bible is boring, archaic, outdated, not relevant to your life today. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was to reawaken us to the opposite of that. The Bible is not boring. It is old, but it is still living and active. And not just that, but the Bible is full of characters, humans, people like Jonah, people like Joseph, who actually we are quite a bit like. And sometimes we're tempted to read their stories and be like, oh, yeah, that's in the Bible 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. But like, what about me today? Like, I'm not going to be swallowed by a whale. But remember, actually, no, that did happen in Chile, so you can get swallowed by a whale. If you weren't here for that, go back on YouTube. But here's what I'm getting at. The Bible is a collection of books that are united in one story. Jesus is the hero. The whole plot line is going up to him. But there's characters in it. And those characters didn't just stop 2,000 years ago. Every single one of us in here, we are also a part of that same grand divine narrative. And so when you read the Bible, don't read it just as, oh yeah, that's them then. Read it as, oh, I am a part of this story too. Years ago, I did this series here called What is the Bible? And the way I organized it was, you can almost read the Bible as like a 6-act Shakespearean play. And I think we are kind of in between Act 5 and Act 6. The book of Revelation, which is the very last book of the Bible, is Act 6, the very end. And most of that hasn't happened yet. Act 5, right before that, is the church. So like when you read the book of Acts, or you read all of those letters penned by the Apostle Paul to the church in Corinth and Rome and Galatia, though those aren't written to us, they are written for us. We are just as much as actors and characters in this story as they were. And so rather than viewing the Bible and treating the Bible as kind of, we are distant bystanders looking at it, I want you to see yourself as a character in it. So here's what I want to do this morning. This is going to be a little bit different. If you have a Bible, real quick, kind of our anchoring text for this morning is Psalm 107. If you need a Bible, we have free ones available underneath your chairs. It'll be on page 416. And I'm just going to read this real quick, and then I'm going to throw a curveball at you. But here's what Psalm 107 says, verse 1. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. And this is our anchoring verse, verse 2. Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story. Those he redeemed from the hand of the foe, those he gathered from the lands, from east and west, from north and south. In other words, everywhere, the whole earth. And I want us to zero in on verse 2. Let the redeemed of the Lord, what? Tell their story. Just to kind of maybe give it even more clarity, let me just read two other translations. There's a lot of different English translations of the Bible. Here's one. The Message puts verse 2 this way. All of you set free by God, tell the world. Tell how he freed you from oppression. The New Living Translation puts it this way. Has the Lord redeemed you? Then speak out. Tell others he has redeemed you from your enemies. And then the NIV, which is what we use here, simply let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story. Now, what does that have to do? Humans of the Bible, characters, all this other kind of stuff. Let me put some of this together now. I came back from Kenya about 4 weeks ago. And one of the things that I noticed real quick when I got back, and I wasn't even like pursuing this, they all kind of came to me, was that I ended up meeting with a couple different guys individually here at the bridge who, for various reasons, as part of hanging out, ended up sharing their testimony with me. Again, unprovoked, they just kind of all organically happened for different reasons. And I was struck. Whoa. God is doing something in the dudes at the bridge. Now, pause. Statistically, it's usually females in American churches who tend to be a little bit more, spiritually hungry. They're usually they attend church a little bit more than males. But these conversations and just kind of overall, I'm like, ooh, no. God is doing something in the guys at our church, all in a good way. And it's not common, but it's becoming common at the bridge, which is good. So then I had that. Then about 48 hours ago, so just 2 days ago, this past Friday morning, Pastor Brock actually went to the ER. Now, you don't need to worry. Pastor Brock's fine. Not a life and death situation, which if you were here about a year ago, he did have a life and death situation with the heart attack. So he goes to the ER. He's been in crazy severe back pain throughout his back, a bunch of stuff like that. But we're talking like crazy severe pain. He came home from the ER Friday night, so he's at home right now, but he's severely medicated. And so Brock was scheduled to preach this morning. So then by Friday night comes, after some things kind of realizing, okay, well, Pastor Brock can't preach this Sunday. He's scheduled to preach, which means, okay, I'm up. And at that point, I kind of had some options. I was like, okay, I can kind of in 36 hours, well, less because I got to sleep, put together a last-minute sermon. And okay, I'll choose one of the characters that, is kind of processing for this series. And honestly, it's kind of like, it's not going to be that good. Last minute, I don't know. Probably the deeper thing, though, is I had a nudge. Ooh, Mark. The Lord brought Psalm 107:2 to me. Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story. Mark, instead of doing a bad 35-minute message, why don't you let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story? In particular, how about these dudes that you've recently met up with these amazing stories? What if they literally shared their redemption story? Okay, that sounds good. Let's do that. And then this has all happened within like 5-10 minutes inside of my mind, up in my room, at my house. And there I was like, man, actually, isn't this the point of this series? Meaning this. The same God of Jonah, the same God of Joseph, the same God of Abraham and Peter and Paul, and honestly, Judas. I'm going to preach a sermon on Judas in a couple weeks. It's going to be crazy. The same God of those characters, those humans in the Bible, is the same God of us today, and he works in the exact same way. So why would we not have people share their story? Because this is the plot line and the script of the scriptures to begin with. That's almost the best thing to do. The point of the Bible is that we read these stories of redemption, and the same God who did that, he's like, I still want to do that today. You're in the story today. You're a character. You're not the main character. Jesus is, but I'm still working out redemption today. This is humans of the Bible. So in some ways, to me, it actually makes a lot of sense halfway through this series to let the redeemed of the Lord share their story. So we're going to have 3 guys share that this morning. Before I invite up the first one, let me say this as kind of a closing thing from the text. In Psalm 107, hopefully by now you know verse 2. It's interesting. If you've grown up in church, when people share their testimony, share their story, literally by nature of how you are physically postured right now, sitting down, it's very easy to become passive. Meaning, oh yeah, I look at the stage, this person's sharing, and I'm just going to listen. And you become passive. No. We don't want a passive Christian faith here. The Bible is not to be read in a passive manner. What do I mean? Psalm 107, after it tells you to let the redeemed of the Lord share their story, 4 times in that psalm, 4 times, verses 8, 15, 21, and 31, here's what our response should be. It's this. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love and his wonderful deeds for mankind. When you hear these testimonies in the next couple minutes, don't be passive, but give thanks to God for his unfailing love and his wonderful deeds amongst mankind. We get that? Okay. We got 3. First up, Rahul. Come on up. Give him a round of applause. Rahul and I mean, this is all real stuff. We had our first one-on-one. That kind of sounded weird, our first one-on-one. We hung out for the first time, just us. Literally last week at his house, he had me over. If you're ever wanting a steak,
oh man,
this is your man right here. So Rahul, you may get a lot of
steak orders.
He made an amazing steak, and so literally we're just at his kitchen island, just him and I eating steak, and he out of nowhere, unprovoked, he said this, Mark, can I share with you my story? Please, great. Shared a story, and by the end of it, I looked at him and I told him this. Rahul, that's probably one of the most compelling stories I have ever heard in my life. So you're going to be blessed by what he's going to share. And I'm blessed just to hear it now a 3rd time. So thank you, Rahul, for everything. And isn't this a fine-looking man right here? I mean, this is amazing. All right, man. Take it away.
Alrighty. I'm going to pull out my phone, keep track of the time, because I got 10 minutes to share the goodness of God's glory. So, no pressure. But real quick, before I start, can we just thank God for Pastor Mark? I mean, the man of God really does hear from God. And I've been around the block, a lot of churches, and you guys are really blessed. We are blessed to have you. So thank you. So my story starts with my parents. My mom and my dad got married under very unusual circumstances. My mom was Hindu. My dad was Muslim. So those of you guys that know that, culturally, that's not acceptable. It's taboo. But I was born under these circumstances in Chennai, India. My mom came here when I was 4 years old, immigrant. My dad ended up leaving, and it was just single mom. I remember moments where I would be in the back seat of the car, kind of tucked away. My mom was a crossing guard, and that was her first job in the States. And so I love my mom tremendously, and she did a tremendous job, by herself. And then my stepfather came into the picture. He was also Muslim, but my mom ended up leaving the U.S., and going to India because my grandfather had a stroke, and we got stuck out because her visa expired. So I was in India when I was in 3rd grade. Then we met my stepdad, and they got married in Jordan. So I was in Jordan now, 4th grade. And so kind of bouncing around quite a bit all over the world. As an adult, I'm like, wow, what an amazing, cultural experience. As a kid, I'm like, can we just sit still? Like, I want to make friends and like keep them, But eventually we came back, and I went to elementary school in Del Mar, California, as well as Irvine. And then later on, we moved to Maryland when I was just in about 9th grade. But for 9th grade, my parents decided to send me off to boarding school, which is a very tough thing. But it wasn't just boarding school, it was boarding school in India by myself. So that was even more challenging. And all the parents with high school aged children, get out a huge pair of scissors and cut your kids some slack, because high school is very challenging, okay? I just want to put that out there. But for me, it was particularly challenging because I was in this foreign land, and I was an American Indian kid, but I was in an Indian school, so they all thought I was a spoiled American brat. And they weren't far off. I was, I didn't speak my language, but I proceeded to be bullied on a daily basis. And I couldn't go home. It's boarding school, so you stay there 9 months in a row. And every day it was wake up, brush teeth, get bullied, go to school, get bullied, come home, get bullied. And on Friday nights, they would have this tradition where they would go into a separate room, they would lock the door, and the younger kids would all fight each other at the direction of the other kids. And if you didn't fight, you would get beat up. So we were forced into this kind of weird pit fighting situation where we were young kids. The parents were nowhere, no parents at all, but no teachers around. And I was a lover, not a fighter. I didn't know how to fight, but I had to learn to survive. And I got to the point where I was fighting on a weekly basis just so I didn't get beat up. And in order to not fight anymore, I decided to strike a deal with the older kids so we were on a mountain in south of India. There's like these mountains where they would basically grow tea leaves, like black tea leaves. And black tea plants have very thorny bushes. So we were high up on this mountain, and at the base of the mountain, there were drugs available for purchase. So the older boys would have me run down the mountain, bloody legs and all, in the middle of the night, grab the drugs, come back up, and I was basically running drugs for them. And in exchange for that service, I didn't have to fight anymore. And so I proceeded to exchange one thing for another, and now I was running up and down this mountain, 4,000, 6,000 feet of elevation, about 4 to 5 miles each way, running drugs, so I didn't have to fight. And this is 9th grade, by the way. So I'm already at a place in my spirituality where I'm coming from a Hindu background, a Muslim background. I've studied the Bhagavad Gita. I've studied the Quran. Those aren't providing any answers. I have a very poor outlook on humanity, where I was forced to fight in these situations. I had an outlook that people weren't to be trusted. And I came back to America with that mindset, finished high school out in Maryland, and my parents and we didn't get along, obviously, because I was like, I blame you for this. But they didn't believe me when I came back that this stuff was happening. And so we didn't end on good terms. And so at 17, I moved out of my parents' house. And I said, I'm not living in Maryland. East Coast weather sucks. I'm coming out to California. So at 17, I had $600 in my pocket, a job at Starbucks, and I came out to California to breakdance my way into something. So I was a professional dancer. My wife is also a dancer. That's how we met. And I came out with $600 in my pocket, very quickly realizing that $600 in Los Angeles does not go very far. And I didn't have much else of a plan, so I ran out of that money and became homeless. And while I was homeless, I was like, okay, like I can afford to feed myself because I worked at Starbucks. So I had coffee to drink, and I had croissants and like all those like pastries that you guys order. I would take home the leftovers, so I had that as my food. But I didn't have anywhere to live, so I basically would take all my stuff. I had like a suitcase about this big and a backpack and a duffel, and I would sneak into like apartment complexes and sleep by the pool. And wake up in the morning, shower really quick, stash my stuff, go to work, come back, wash, rinse, and repeat 24/7 basically for 3 months. And this, for me, was approaching a low point in my life, where all this time I had been looking for meaning. I had searched in the Hindu religion. I had searched in the Muslim religion, Islamic religion. I searched the world over to try and find some sense of purpose and meaning for my life. And I had gotten to the point where I was now in Los Angeles all by myself. I didn't tell my parents that I was struggling because I was too prideful to do that. And I was homeless, had no direction, aimless, really just no hope. And I started attending a church. And this was a church in North Hollywood. That's actually where I met my wife, my beautiful wife right there. She was engaged to another man at the time. So she wasn't, I wasn't trying anything. But I didn't know. It was a very, another testimony. She'll talk about it. But yeah, that being said, I met Jesus there, but I didn't really know Jesus. I was more or less attending for the sake of, like, Christians are really nice people, and sometimes they give you free stuff. So I was like, I'm gonna go to church, get some free stuff. But that being said, I was going, and I got to this point where I was like, you know what? The only thing I haven't tried is having a sexual encounter. I'm a virgin. I'm 17 years old. I haven't had sex at this point. So can I be real with you, church? Is that all right? Can I talk about this? Okay, cool. I'm going to talk about it anyways. So at this point, I was like, I need to have a sexual encounter in order to find some sort of meaning in my life. This is the only way. I have no other real way of proceeding. And so got really drunk one night and had a sexual encounter with a woman from work. And it was terrible. Horrible experience. And I woke up at 4 a.m. thinking, that's it. There's no meaning to life. There's no hope. There's no reason to live. And I had gotten to the point where the depression and the anxiety and everything that I was living up to that point got to a head. And I went into the bathroom. I used to take the industrial grade bleach that we'd have at Starbucks home because I couldn't afford cleaning supplies. And I opened the cabinet, took out the bleach, had about half a bottle left, and I downed the whole thing. And it was acrid. It tasted disgusting. It was like, it burned on the way down like you couldn't imagine. And I hopped in the shower, rinsed off, and I was like, all right, I'm going to get back to bed after this experience. I'm not going to wake up again. This is it. This is the end of my story. I woke up 4 hours later. She was still there. Called her an Uber, sent her off on her way. I was like, I'm still alive, but it's probably going to kick in any second now. But my friend calls me up and says, hey, got 2 tickets to Disneyland. You want to go? And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, happiest place on earth, perfect place to die. Like, let's go. I did not for once really consider how unkind that is. Like, we would be on, like, It's a Small World, and then I would just die right next to him. And I was like, man, like, hindsight 2020, I was terrible, but I didn't die. So God redeemed that. But not just that. I go to church on that Sunday. I talk to God. I said, Lord, at this point, it's been 48 hours. I have not died. I gave up the right to live when I committed suicide that evening. And the rest of my life, if I keep living, I'm in overtime. This is not my time, this is your time. So from that moment on, I committed the rest of my life to serving and loving God with all my heart, soul, and mind, because I had no other reason to live. I will say, though, like, if anybody's watched basketball, overtime does not mean that you don't have struggle. In fact, I would dare to argue that overtime is where best basketball ever is found. And so is true for my life. I did not stop struggling, but I had a reason for the struggle. I had a hope to profess. I had a meaning to reach for. And it's where I met my wife of 8 years. We've been married. My 2 beautiful children. 6 and 2 years old, Brielle and Chloe. You'll see them running around after church. They always play tag. My life went from homeless to being able to own a home, from hopeless to being able to profess and share hope with others. It went from, I don't know what I'm doing next, to I know that the next is in God's hands, and I'm going to live each day according to that purpose. So I'm here to tell you guys today, in the brief time that I have, that God does have a plan for you. That where you are now is not where you will be. And that it is always darkest before dawn. But the sun is rising on your life. It will get better. And God is for you, not against you. He has a plan for you. Thank you.
Woo. Oh, Rahul. Here's your phone. Let me first get your credit card. Just joking. I heard that over eating steak with him. Was that good? But we're just getting going. Let's go to round 2. Matthew, come on up. All right, my man. Bless us again.
How's everyone doing? So I just want to point out, he's not wrong about that text message. He was like, hey, Matt, coming to church on Sunday? And, of course, I respond the way I do. I go, yeah. I mean, unless I'm not sick or anything like that. But I didn't truly agree or commit to anything. And I was like, yeah, yes, I'm coming to church. Okay. Can you come to both sermons? Yeah. What's going on? I'll talk to you later. Just my mind is spinning at this point. Luckily, Mark, I believe, read the room and was like, you're not in trouble. I'm like, oh, thank the Lord. But then he had a conversation with me and was like, hey, I want you to talk. And I'm not going to lie to you, man, what a whirlwind I just went through, even thinking about the story. Even though I've shared it with Mark, I've shared it with Raul, I've probably shared it with people with Alpha, if any of my Alpha groups here. But, man, it was a struggle. So, a little bit of my backstory is I grew up Catholic. I went to the Catholic Church. I went through all the holy sacraments, the whole 9. Within that, I started listening to punk rock and really gravitated towards the culture. Drinking, the drugs, screw the government, screw everyone else. It's just the punk rock thing to do. But within that, because I did do my holy sacraments, I tried to stay close to my church. I tried to stay close to the Lord. And I jumped in. I'm like, I want to help with the teens. I want to help them learn the way that I learn. And unfortunately, it did not sit well, especially with the punk rocker being there, with the way that I looked, with the way that I wanted to teach, with the way of the language that I understood, that I was hoping they would understand. So that was the moment where I turned my back on the church. I still believed in God, especially when I was 18. And I was suicidal. And I sat there, and all I kept thinking was, how do I do this without making my mom cry? And I just cried out to the Lord, and I said, just show me you exist. Just give me a sliver, give me a look through the keyhole, and I swear I won't do it. Something told me to go to my Bible, so I did. I opened my Bible. It's the New American Bible. And it fell onto Matthew, chapter 16, the demand for a sign. And I looked up and I was like, fair enough. What a kind of slap to the face on my end, right? He was like, you want a sign? All right, here you go. The problem with that is I didn't run to the Lord. Even when I asked for what I wanted, I didn't run to the Lord. I was quick to anger still. I loved drinking. I couldn't just have one drink. I needed to be inebriated. I needed to feel it. And I've been like that for 20, maybe 25 years. Started drinking when I was 10. My life had went on. And not till recently, I just started getting really stressed out at work. And there was a voice telling me to go to our chapel at work. I didn't realize what that voice was, but something was guiding me to the chapel. So I went in and I prayed. And in praying for that month, I started reading the Bible. And after doing it for about a month, I looked to my wife and I go, hey, you want to go to church? She looked at me and goes, it's not on my to-do list. Why? I go, I don't know, man. There's something calling me to go to church. Okay, find us a church. Okay, so I started calling. And man, some of those phone calls were rough. I got hung up on. I got attitude because I asked, what version of the Bible do you read? Oh, is it Methodist? What is this? I didn't want to go back to the Catholic Church. I didn't feel comfortable. I wanted context. I was hungry. But I still didn't know what I was hungry for because I've always been hungry for alcohol. I've always been hungry for drugs. Meth was one of the only ways to not black out from drinking. I accidentally did heroin once. I know. Really weird statement, isn't it? How does one have that? When someone sits next to you and goes, there's no such thing as contact high. Okie dokie. And sat there and I went through it. Even with all that, something was still calling my good heart. Something was calling. So I called the bridge. Beth answered and answered all questions. No attitude. All love. I looked to my wife and go, hey, I think we should go to this place. It's this Sunday? Yeah. Okay. So we came, and I got closer to the Lord. I got closer to the Lord. I'm happy. The Lord accepted me for me because I still listen to punk rock. I still listen to metal. I listen to Christian metal. I listen to Christian punk rock. Listen to Christian hardcore. I still listen to the message. Some of my best friends here, man, they've been through hard times as well as I. But I always try to reach out to them with the word, with the love of the word. And I know I dance. I know I dance to a different drum. I know I look different. But Jesus loves me for me, who I am, every flaw, every single thing. I didn't get to share this in the 9 a.m., but Jesus is working in mysterious ways through me. Not too long ago, we had a sermon, and it was about letting go, forgiving. I have an uncle. He slapped me like a grown man when I was 7. I wasn't doing anything wrong, but he did it. And then later on in life, when I was around 18, he said I was a disgrace to all Mexicans because I didn't speak Spanish. That hurts in your DNA. That hurts down to the bone. But not too long ago, someone came on this stage and was like, you need to release all your anger. Who do you need to forgive? I forgave him. No matter how much it hurt me, I forgave him. I got a phone call on Friday. It was my dad. He said, your uncle wants to talk to you. About what? He says he doesn't remember slapping you. My dad reminded him that he called me a disgrace to all Mexicans. And my uncle said, tell him to come over. Tell him I want to apologize to him. I haven't spoken to my uncle in years. And my dad asked me, are you willing to go see your uncle? And I told him, I would love nothing more than to fulfill God's will and go to my uncle and allow that sorry to happen because I've already given it to the Lord. I've already given it to Jesus. It's not my burden anymore. So I just want to tell you guys that my name is Matthew. I'm a punk rocker. I dance to a different drum, but I've surrendered myself to the Lord.
You know, real quick, I realized this. All three of us met before the 9 a.m. service very, very briefly. Enrique, would you come on up here? Let's give Enrique a round of applause. So, Enrique, Matthew, and Rahul. All three were in our last round of Alpha in the spring. And I actually think two of you were in the same group, right? It was Rahul and Matthew, and then, you were in the other. And I want to say this because I think this is an important moment to capture. We'll be launching Alpha again, in the beginning of September, and you'll hear about it in the coming weeks. But please know this. Every single one of us in here probably has someone like an Enrique or a Matthew or a Rahul in our lives. And they're waiting, maybe they realize it or not, for you to maybe invite them to Alpha, and then someone that can end up with the same life change as these three guys. Just please, tuck that in. An invitation can lead to transformation. Enrique, thank you, and now bless us.
Thank you, Mark. So good morning, everyone. It's truly an honor to stand here today and share how God has worked in my life. I'd like to reflect on how my journey has mirrored Abraham's in many ways. A story marked by doubt, wandering, and pain, but also calling, trust, and transformation. I was raised Catholic. I knew who Jesus was. I knew some prayers, and I had heard parts of the Bible, but God always felt distant to me. My family didn't go to church all that often, and my home life was anything but peaceful. My father was a very verbally and physically abusive father, especially when he was drunk. I remember hearing him say terrifying things to my mom, and things that no child should ever hear. That kind of trauma didn't go away. Still, I tried to live a good life. So growing up, I tried to be the best person that I could possibly be. I went to school. I had good grades. I stayed away from drugs. I delved deep into classical music. I played the clarinet all through high school. So I tried to do the best that I possibly could. Even though I had all those traumatic experiences growing up, I made a declaration to myself early on that I wasn't going to allow those things to dictate who I was going to become. And so around 2008, when I was 17 years old, my dad was actually deported for domestic violence and 2 DUIs. And so that left my mom and I in a situation where we both had to get jobs in order to be able to take care of my 2 younger siblings, a younger brother and a younger sister. And again, because he was the sole provider, we had no other source of income, no savings, and so it put us in a really bad situation. So I had to go to school and work at the same time. And luckily, I got a scholarship to go to Cal State Long Beach to be a music major from playing the clarinet. And then from being a music major 2 years in, I decided to switch over to civil engineering. All the meanwhile, still working and trying to keep the family afloat. So I got through college. I graduated as a civil engineer, and you'd think that that would feel like a victory, but inside I was angry. I was angry at life, angry at my dad, and eventually angry at God. I kept thinking to myself, I try to be a good person, and I've done as good as I possibly can, and all these bad things still happen to me. There was so much struggle and there was so much pain, even when I didn't feel like I did anything wrong. So it kind of delved me into labeling myself agnostic. Through my studies as a civil engineer, I did physics, I did science, mathematics, a lot of the things that pointed to such as physics, there's no way you can create matter or destroy it, and so the Big Bang Theory never makes sense to me. There was a lot of things in mathematics that just mathematics and music actually that pointed to a structure, that pointed to something that was just out there in the world that we were all discovering. So to me, the world and the universe was designed, and it felt like because there's a designer, because there's a design, there has to be a designer. So I always believed that God was out there. I just didn't understand how religion fit into it all. I knew that I felt alone, bitter, and tired. And so I actually remember a moment where we went to Rosarito to meet my dad after I think it was 6 to 8 years of not seeing him. We went down and had like a weekend, I think it was, to go and see him. And so we spent time with him and everything was good. But then that day, one of the days at night, I went out to the balcony of the hotel we were staying in, and I looked up, and I still knew that even though some things were better in my life, I was still very angry and I felt very alone. I cried out to God that day, not as a theologian and not as a perfect man, but as a broken soul. I asked Him to help me stop being angry and show me how and what love was, real unconditional love. And in 2009, God answered that prayer, and He sent into my life Jordan, who is now my girlfriend. So in March 8th of 2019, we started dating. We moved in together pretty quickly. We wanted to see if it was going to work, and things were working out really well. My life felt like it was getting back on track, like things were going well. I felt like I had a connection with someone like I'd never had before. In 2020, I actually got my first job as a civil engineer. So things again were looking good. Career, I had a partner in life. I felt like things were getting better. I was moving up in the company, getting promotions, more responsibilities. So in 2020, we moved over to Chino. And unfortunately, in 2023, a couple of weeks after we had re-signed our lease, I was laid off. So to backtrack a little bit, when we first moved to Chino, we kept driving up and down Pine to get home. And every single time we would look at this building, or I would look at this building, and I would always wonder, I wonder what that building is. For whatever reason, every single time we drove by, I would look at the building and I would always ask myself, what is that building? So one day, eventually, I asked Jordan, I'm like, hey, what is that building? I wonder what it is. I mean, it looks like a warehouse type thing. I wonder if they sell something. And she actually looked it up, and she's like, no, it's a Christian church. So I put it in the back of my head. That's interesting. Maybe one day we'll go. So while when I was laid off, I went through a really tough time. I was depressed. I felt like I wasn't going to get anywhere. I was looking for jobs and nothing was calling back. So I fell in a really depressed state. So much so that and I didn't mention in the 9 o'clock, so much so that one day I locked myself in a closet and I wanted to commit suicide. My mom showed up and everybody was there. They were trying to talk me out of it. And luckily I didn't. But in being in that closet and contemplating suicide, I had prayed, or I had not prayed. I was yelling at God. I had yelled at God in that moment and said, you have given me so much, both good and bad, and every single time anything looks like it's going great, it just seems like you take it away. So moving forward, I'm not gonna ask for anything. I don't want anything. Just my life is yours, and you do whatever you want with it. And it was weird, but in that moment, it kind of relieved me of that pain. And one day, while we were driving up and down Pine, I could not turn my face away from the bridge, and I had told Jordan, I'm like, hey, I want to go to church one of these days. And so she agreed, and we came. So this is where God met me. The first day we visited the bridge, it felt like home. Not because it was perfect, but because I felt God meet me here at my lowest place. Just like Abraham, God was calling me to step into an unfamiliar territory and trust Him. And so I did. We came to church every single week. We actually got baptized. We were just going through as much as we could, just reading the Bible, getting familiar with the stories, and really trying to dive as deep into it as we could. So a few months go by, and I actually found a job. Something called up, and I got another job in construction, and everything was good, better paying. And then about 6 months later, I get a call where I was actually getting recruited from another company that was very similar to the one that had laid me off for the similar job, and it actually came with an increase in pay. So things were looking a lot better. But that wasn't the only thing that got better in my life since coming to church, since putting my life in God's hands. My family bonds also strengthened. We would always go hang out with my family, and we would always bicker. We would always have arguments. We always almost ended up always being in a fight because of some dumb reason that we were arguing about. And ever since then, we actually started to find an appreciation for each other. We would always appreciate each other, having spent the time with each other, because we know we have busy lives, but we just kind of started to appreciate each other's presence. And since then, we typically don't ever fight. I mean, we still have a few dinner fights here and there, but it's nothing that's out of the normal. And one of the another thing that happened this last year in January, it actually turned out that my birthday was on a Sunday. So we came to church and we were sitting here waiting for service to start. And while I was sitting there, I got a text message, and I had always had the number saved, but it was from my dad. So it kind of threw me off because I hadn't spoken to him in over a decade. And in that moment, I opened the message, and he was wishing me a happy birthday and was telling me he hoped I had a great day. And it was really weird, just because that wasn't the person that I knew, not the person that I grew up with, and definitely not the type of person who ever remembered my birthday. If anything, he was the one that always forgot my birthday. So it threw me off, and I went home and I prayed on it. I spoke with God, and I asked him to show me what it meant. What was it that this meant? Because it came so out of the blue that I knew that God had something to do with it. And I prayed and prayed, and eventually it came to me that he was asking me to forgive him. So I actually gave him a call, and we spoke for a while. And through that conversation, I let him know that I forgave him. That as many wrongs as he had done to me and to our family, and all the abuse that we endured from him, that I forgave him from the bottom of my heart. And to try not to cry right now, but in that moment, I realized that I was no better than him. I was also a sinner, and I needed grace just like he did. And so in that moment, I forgave him, and it was something that I never thought I could do, but I knew I did it because I had God's strength in me. And then another thing that happened to me soon after that was God gave me the courage to speak to my brother, who was also carrying a lot of the same bitterness that I had. I would always talk to him, and he had a good job, but he had a family. He just was always angry, and God gave me the words to encourage him, and I saw his heart change, and he picked up a Bible and began a new path, and now we both walk together in faith. So it was a really good transformation for him as well. And another transformation was in it of myself. Since I started coming to church and since I became a follower of Christ, I stopped smoking. I stopped smoking marijuana. I started to care about myself, taking care of my body, taking vitamins, working out, making sure that I was taking care of this body that God had given me, that Jesus had sacrificed himself for this body. And so I started taking care of it so that I could show how much I love that. And in that, I learned to love myself as well. I learned because a lot of the times I was always the biggest nitpicker of myself, and I would always I was my worst critic, and so in that I started to learn to love myself and understand that everything that I was God. And I started reading the Bible. I started learning more about it, dove deeper, and we actually started, like Mark mentioned, we came to Alpha. From Alpha, we then formed a group. We actually became really, really close. That now we meet every single Wednesday. Not every, but pretty often we meet every Wednesday, and we practice the ways of God. And so we've been practicing Sabbath. We've been practicing Scripture, and just doing Bible studies. And so we've even built a community with God. So God answered a lot of prayers for me and transformed my life. So I'm no longer chained by my past. I fall short and have my moments where I stumble and fall, but I know now that where to go and when I do. I've learned that where my strength ends, his begins. Like Abraham, I've learned that even when you don't know where the road leads, faith means following anyways. And that's my story.
Well, so, I mean, I hate to say this, but the 9 a.m. got the better end of the stick with this story, and you're probably like, what do you mean, Mark? So Enrique, what you just heard, he shared at the 9 a.m. Then the worship team came up. Which worship team? Come on up. Oh, yeah, this is amazing. You guys are awesome. They did their closing songs. Then I came back up to close the service. Enrique came up with me, and then this happened.
Thank you. Yeah, so the backstory on this is I came up, and the speech that I gave was walking with God has changed everything for me. I do my best to walk in obedience and to turn from sin and live a life that honors him. But as I've drawn closer to God, there was still one area that God had gently and persistently been speaking to me to make right, and it's something that He wanted me to make right. So I prayed over it, and I want to live a life in full obedience. And in my testimony, I didn't spend much time talking about the one prayer that God answered that radically changed my whole life, and that was Him sending my personal angel, Jordan. So with everybody here as my witness and with God at the center of the moment, I felt like I needed to make it right, where I was living with her, and I wasn't committing to a marriage. So that's what happened. So yeah, so I proposed. And I plead to many of you out there that may be in a similar situation, living with a significant other that you haven't fully committed. I'd ask that you take the step, and that if you put your life in God's hands, that the only way to do it is if you commit to someone as well, and that's the way that God wanted it. So stop living in what I would say, what I considered it for myself, sin, and just fully commit if you're really ready.
Come on, how good is that? Jordan, you want to say anything?
I don't have anything prepared. No, I'm good.
So yeah, he proposed to her right here at the end of the service. How amazing is that? God is so good. Let's give them another round of applause. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I encourage you, go on our YouTube channel, go to the 9 a.m. live stream. You can watch it happen. Like, it literally happened. It was absolutely amazing. Could I just invite everyone to stand now? Obviously, we conclude our services with worship. And I'm going to invite our prayer team up on both sides, the left and the right of the stage. And I just want to speak to you. If you are here and anything that the three gentlemen shared or anything even beyond that resonated with you, come forward and get prayer. Don't live this life alone. I think there is a common thread out of those three. If you caught it, like, they bottomed out. From suicidal thoughts to drinking bleach. Sometimes the best place to be is when you are bottomed out, because the only thing that gets you out is Jesus. And that is the most theologically true statement. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And so whatever you're going through, let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story. And He's up to something. We sang that song. He's up to something. He's healing someone. He's saving someone. That's true of every single. God is up to something in your story. Let Him finish writing it. So if you need prayer for anything, please come forward. Could you just open up your hands? It's a posture of receiving now. We always say this ancient prayer. Come, Holy Spirit. We're hungry. Fill us, Lord. More of you, less of us.